In this video, we'll be looking at how to create our own dense function using NumPy instead of calling it from the TensorFlow framework. So dense is actually responsible for creating the activation value for a particular layer. So at first what we'll be doing is that we'll be declare the function dense, and it's gonna accept three parameters, which is gonna be a in the activation value it will get from the previous layer, and then we will also have the parameter w, which is the matrix, the parameter w, and then we will also have the other parameter, which is in case b. The reason for which we are storing it in small letter b, because b is vector and the w is matrix. So let's give the colon and move down, and then we need to know the number of units which we have in this layer. Let's store it in units, and it's gonna be equal to the number of column of the matrix w. So we'll say w dot shape, and in the square bracket we will use just 1 in order to access only the columns. And in the next line, what we'll be doing is that we will be creating a variable which will be storing the activation value of this particular layer which we are accessing. So we will say a underscore out, and at first just let's create the placeholder. So we will be using the NumPy library and creating an empty array, and the number of elements which is gonna be in this empty array is gonna be the same as the number of columns which we have got from the matrix w. So we will just say units. So now let's use a for loop in order to access each of the columns of the matrix w. So we'll say we use for each element in range, and range is gonna be the same as units, and let's give the colon and move down, and we will now access each of the columns. So we will say small letter w because it's a vector, not a matrix, and we will say it's equals to the big letter matrix w, and we will use colon because we will only access the column, not the rows, and loop the column values. Let's now write the formula for the dot multiplication of a in along with w, and then sum it up with b, and we will be storing that in z. We have to use the numpy dot function, and what we'll be multiplying is the value of w along multiplying the value of w which we have accessed before with the a in value which we have got as parameter, and then don't forget to sum it with the b value. We only need to sum it with the particular column of b. Let's now access each of the columns of a out which we have declared before. So we will use j, and it's gonna be equal to the segment function. So I've already created the segment function. We will use g bracket, and I will give the parameter which is going to be z in this case. So in the very last, we have to mention the return of this particular function, so it's going to be a out. So in this way we can easily calculate the activation of a layer manually instead of any framework.